All right, we are live. Okay, thank you, Laurie. So here we are, just about on time. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I'm going to read our item number 1 on our agenda, the land acknowledgement. I acknowledge with respect that we are in Province and Huron Treaty Territory. That is the land in which we are gathered, is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe known as Powhatan. Powhatan is the home of Garden River First Nation, Batchelor First Nation, the historic Sault Ste. Marie Métis Council. Okay, item 2 on our agenda is adoption of the minutes. Everyone's had a chance to read the minutes. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, I ask for a mover. Mark. Oh. Okay. And a seconder. Paul. Yeah. Okay, Paul. All in favor? Okay, item number 3. Does anyone have a declaration of pecuniary interest? Okay, then noted. Item number 4, adoption of the agenda. Any questions or comments about the agenda? If not, I ask for a mover, please. Tracy. And the seconder for the event, adoption of the agenda. Chris. All in favor? Okay, item number 5, business arising, I think is, why don't we already have Rachel give us her little.
So I'll just share the screen for the slideshow.
Okay. So the clerk's office does do once boards and committees have their appointment processes, we like to do a quick dog and pony show to talk to you about procedure bylaw and how it affects your meetings. And I'll also preface this with clerks is always there to that you questions, whatever, we're always there as a resource to you, but I'll give you an overview. So local boards and committees of council include advisory and other committees or boards whose members are appointed by council for an ongoing purpose. We also have special committees that can be appointed by council for a specific purpose from time to time. When we talk about governance versus management, council provides governance, oversight, planning, or big picture. So when we talk about your committee, it's the same concept. And then the operations are the responsibility of staff. So staff, in terms of city staff to council, staff brings operational plans, strategies, a budget that aligns with the strategic plan approved by council. With respect to advisory boards, a board like this and its advisory committee makes recommendations for council to consider and hopefully approve. So accountability and transparency requirements include compliance with the Municipal Act, the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, the city's procedure bylaw, and the code of conduct for members of council and local boards. So the procedure bylaw under the Municipal Act applies to the following proceedings of meetings of the council as well as its local boards and committees. There are a couple of exceptions like police services boards or public library boards. And a committee means any advisory or other committee, subcommittee, or similar entity of which at least 50% of the members are also members of one or more councils or local boards. A meeting means any regular, special, or other meeting where there's a quorum present and members discuss or materially advance the business of the committee. So if you were to all go out for a dinner with all of your committee, you do have quorum, As long as you're not advancing the business of your committee, you're not holding a meeting. But if during the course of this dinner, you were to talk about things that advance the business of it, you would be found to be improperly closed. We always point out to groups as well, because it's easy to get into group email discussions when you sit on a committee. If you're doing that, that is in effect a meeting. So you shouldn't be doing that. Like email one another individually, email your staff resource. But once you start having group email discussions as a committee, you're also improperly enclosed. So the agenda generally, I don't know how it works for your committee, but generally it's set by the chair in consultation with the staff resource. It should be posted to the city website at least 24 hours in advance. A week is better, but it has to be that 24. There have been some ombudsman investigations that have criticized committees and councils for not providing sufficient notice and providing detail. The business is considered in the order set forth in the agenda. However, the chair can vary that if it works better for conduct of the meeting. And a member can ask that a motion is placed on the agenda provided they have a seconder. So if one of your members wanted to have something on next month's agenda and they have a seconder for it, then as long as there's a mover and a seconder, it can go on your agenda. Meetings shall be open to the public and no person shall be excluded except for improper conduct. Notice of meetings is published on the city website, including all the supplementary data in your agenda, as well as the minutes. The procedure bylaw provides that the public can record by video or audio. And we also like to remind committees that subcommittees are still subject to the procedure bylaw and the open meeting provisions. Because sometimes we'll have committees that will establish a subcommittee with the intent that it doesn't have to meet the open meeting provisions, unless it's a task force, so it has more staff than members of your committee, it still needs to be open. I don't know if you guys do subcommittees.
Yeah.
This is a terrible slide. I'm always embarrassed that I would show such a slide because it disobeys all the rules of PowerPoint. What it is cut and paste of the whole section 239 that allows you to be enclosed. So I suspect that your committee may be talking about personal matters about identifiable individuals and probably into secrets or information that shouldn't be released to the public such that it would undermine somebody's position. Anytime you're wondering if you need to go enclosed and you're wondering whether it fits, give us a call and we'll help walk you through that. When you do go into closed, you need to pass a motion saying that you're going to close and then quoting which section of the legislation you're going into closed under. I also like to point out that these are mays, not have to. So maybe you've got something that could come under, say, talking about a personal matters about an identifiable individual. You don't have to go into closed because maybe it's a great thing, but you know, they're the person of the year and you want to talk about it. So it's permissive, not prescriptive. You can go into closed for educational or training sessions, again, as long as you're not talking about things that materially advance the business or decision-making of the committee. As a rule, we don't go into closed, as much as we can go into closed for education. If it's generally innocuous, right? Unless you're being educated about something that's really specific to something controversial or whatever. Generally, we just leave them open because there's always the query as to what you're talking about in closed, even if it is just for education. With the changes to the Municipal Act, now we can have electronic meetings. The link to your YouTube or to our YouTube channel where your meeting's being broadcast should be on the agenda. We had a couple of ombudsman investigations that was found to be a best practice. We had a couple of committees that inadvertently didn't have the link in the agenda, and they were asking to people to call in and register, and then they share the Zoom link. And the ombudsman's recommendation as a best practice was no, let everybody see it embedded in your agenda. There you go. There have been a couple of ombudsman investigations into municipal councils, I think some committees in Southern Ontario, where they've lost their YouTube or whatever software they're using to stream and continue to meet, and they've been found to be improperly posed. So if you lose that live stream, adjourn. Hopefully it's something that your techno knowledgeable people can fix shortly. Another issue you would reconvene once you can broadcast. So the Municipal Act provides that a person can request an investigation by the ombudsman as to whether council met improperly in closed session. And then the ombudsman investigates, provides and publishes a report and gives recommendations if the body is found to have met improperly in closed. And then council or the board passes a resolution as to how it intends to address this report. We did have two, we got the reports recently. They were from meetings that happened in November 2021. So that's how long it took to go through the whole process. Once we realized that the public didn't have immediate access because those URLs weren't in the agenda, we changed it immediately anyway. We didn't wait for the ombudsman's report to come out to say that. What I did find interesting of that process was I would have expected that the ombudsman would issue that report to the board itself. In fact, they issued it to council, and then council passed the resolution as to how it intended to address it. In our procedure bylaw, rules of conduct and debate, the chair presides. Board and committee meetings are held in committee of the whole, so that allows the rules to be more relaxed. If you watch council, you'll see that through you, councillors, or through you, Mr. Mayor, to councillor so-and-so, may I ask this, and I can only speak so many times and for a specific period of time. In committee of the whole, those rules are more relaxed. So with respect to conduct of members, a member is not to disobey the provisions of the procedure bylaw or the decision of the chair on questions of interpretation of the rules of procedure or to breach parliamentary decorum. Motions should be in writing, and the operative clause commences with the words resolved that. And as I said earlier, it needs to be moved and seconded. So often there's a preamble where they'll say, whereas the city of Sault Ste. Marie is a beautiful place, and whereas we want more parks, and whereas, but it's that resolved with that's your operative clause. A member who wishes to introduce a motion that's not on the agenda and that is of a substantive nature must introduce the motion as a notice of motion. So when I said earlier, if a member wanted something on an agenda, move, second, there's your motion, it can go on the agenda. If it comes to this meeting and say Tracy wants to introduce something that nobody else here knew about, it would go on as a notice of motion because you shouldn't be discussing things that haven't been available to the public to know that you're discussing in the forum. So then you can have the notice of motion on this meeting, and then the motion would be for the next. I don't know whether with PRAC you would ever run into this where there's a motion to reconsider something. So if you've made a decision, it shouldn't be introduced for a rediscussion for another 12 months. You can do so if somebody who voted with the prevailing side, so the motion carries, somebody who voted for it and seconded by a member who also voted for it or who wasn't there, then you can have a reconsideration of that motion without having to wait for that 12-month period. That's really so that somebody, if you have a pet project and you bring it forward and it doesn't go the way you want it to not have it come back at a meeting every meeting. It's just to keep things running smoothly. On all motions, discussion must be relevant to the subject under consideration. So the chair will keep that in line, that if the discussion is moving off somewhere that isn't relevant to the matter at hand. Quorum, the mayor is an ex officio member, but he is not counted as quorum. You shouldn't consider business unless a quorum is present. Quorum is a majority of the members, and if lost during the meeting ends. So if you have it now, and enough people leave that you don't, then your meeting is over. I am going to talk in a couple of slides about conflicts of interest. If you lose quorum because people have declared a conflict, you can still carry on. The staff resource keeps minutes. The Municipal Act specifically states that minutes shall be recorded without note or comment. So it's not supposed to be a narrative of this discussion ensued about this, and then so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that. As a corporate body, your action is captured in your resolution, not in your narrative in your minutes. So that's why the Act says that your minutes are recorded without note or comment. The staff resource provides notice of meetings, arranges to have minutes and agendas posted to the website, and performs clerical functions as required. The chair of a committee votes. That's a myth that's out there that heads of council or chairs of committees only vote in the event of the tie, but that's not true. If you have recorded votes, which I would assume that you're not that formal in this setting, but if you do, everybody votes, and there's no provision to abstain. So it's either a yes or a no. If you have a tied vote, it is defeated. So when I talked about the ombudsman earlier, the ombudsman is the closed meeting investigator, unless a municipality can appoint somebody else to be their open meeting investigator. Sault Ste. Marie has appointed the Ombudsman of Ontario. The ombudsman can also review complaints about administrative actions and decisions of municipalities. So people can complain to the ombudsman about the process, and then the ombudsman will do an investigation as to, do you have a formal process in place? Would you follow it? They can't overturn decisions. They can just make sure that we're obeying the process that's in place. The Integrity Commissioner, on the other hand, investigates application of the Code of Conduct for members of council and local boards. We're actually going through an update of that Code of Conduct at the moment, and once it's approved by council, it'll be circulated. The Integrity Commissioner can also investigate the application of other procedures, rules, and policies governing ethical behavior of the members. Members of council and local boards can make inquiries to the Integrity Commissioner if they're not sure whether they have a conflict under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and also has a responsibility to provide educational information regarding the above. The Municipal Act requires that a code of conduct be established for municipal councils, advisory committees, and local boards. And it talks about things like gifts and benefits, confidentiality, use of board property or municipal property, influence on staff, and improper use of influence. These are relatively, you've heard all about this recently in the municipal administration program, but they were mandatory for City of Toronto initially, and fairly recently have become mandatory codes of conduct and appointment of integrity commissioners for municipalities in Ontario. So under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, where a member has a pecuniary or financial interest, whether it's direct or indirect in a matter, and is present at a meeting where the matter is the subject of consideration, the member should, you've got it in your agenda up in number 3 or whatever, declare that interest, not take part in the discussion of or vote, and shouldn't attempt to influence other members in the way they vote. And there's now a requirement for a written disclosure. So we keep a register where people have declared pecuniary interest that could be examined by the public. And that interest also extends to those of family members. If a meeting is open, you can declare and you don't have to leave the room. A lot of members like to for optics. Where it's closed, it's mandatory that the member must leave. If you happen to be absent from a meeting where there's a matter considered that you have a pecuniary interest, you should declare it at the next. The disclosure is recorded in the minutes. And as I said earlier, if you lose quorum because of declared conflicts, the quorum is still deemed constituted. And they use so many big words when they talk about municipal conflict of interest act. In the indirect, that speaks to you may have an interest as a shareholder or a director of a corporate body or be a member of another body, that you still will have a financial interest. That's just what we would call an indirect as opposed to a direct personal financial interest. So this is the slide that we kind of winnowed down all of that to the questions you would ask yourself. Do I have a financial interest in the decision? And that can be either a positive or a negative financial interest. Does it directly affect my finances or those of my parent, spouse, or child? Is it indirect? So am I a shareholder, corporate officer, member of a body, partner, or employee? If it's yes and not subject to exemptions, declare the conflict in writing and do not attempt to influence the vote. Exceptions are if you have a conflict by reason of the member having a pecuniary interest, which is in an interest in common with the electors generally. So you live next door to a park, but everybody is going to benefit from this park. You wouldn't necessarily call that, I shouldn't say live next door to. If you like to go to Bellevue Park, all of us do. So you don't have a conflict because of that. You're holding it in common with others. And also there's an exception by reason only of an interest of the member that's so remote or insignificant, which is my Bellevue Park is probably a better example of being remote or insignificant, that it cannot reasonably be regarded as likely to influence the member. And the other piece of legislation is the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act to protect privacy of individuals and to provide for the disclosure of certain records upon request. So we take the position that the best practice is to release documents which are already public available. So rather than ask somebody if they wanted to see an agenda or so on, you don't make them go through all of those hoops. It's publicly available anyway, so we'll share it. But what we really like to talk to our boards. I wanted to go backwards. I went all the way back. What we like to talk to our board and committee members about with respect to municipal. Okay, I messed it up. I only have one more slide. Communications regarding the business of the municipality are considered a record regardless of whether a device is personal or not. So if you're talking about committee business, whether it's on a cell phone, your personal cell phone, it is still information that could be accessed under a Freedom of Information request. So just because it's on your personal doesn't mean that if somebody submitted a Freedom of Information request that asks for all the information about that was discussed about such and such, it can still be accessed. So just bear in mind when you are texting or emailing that sort of thing, that is this something that it might be better to have telephone conversation about rather than have it subject to the provisions of the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And my last slide, we talk about communications or surveys. We just point out that the boards are subordinate and accountable to council. Council appoints these, you as members to boards and committees. And we had on this slide stated statements critical of city council or its members are not appropriate. That was with respect to a specific incident we had where we had a committee of council that put out a survey that was specifically criticizing council and asking for input with respect to decisions council was making. And we had to reach out to them to say, you're a creature of council. You don't really get to do that. And more to the point, you're skewing the results of what you're going to get from your survey if you're sending it out when it's already got a view to the negative. So we have a couple of slides that we've put in there just because specific circumstances have arisen. Just bumps that we've discovered along the way that we just want to point out. I know I went really fast there because I know you've got a lot of other things to discuss. If anybody's got questions, I'm happy to try to answer.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as I said, clerk's office is always there as a resource for you if you're wondering about whether something should properly be an open or closed, and we would always hold your hand through the any FOI or investigation. I think.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gavel through the whole thing. Okay. Have a good meeting. Bye, Rachel.
Welcome, Virginia. If you were here.
I was listening.
Okay. Now moving along on business arising. Item 5.2, park development update. Is that why you showed up, Virginia?
Yeah, no,
Oh,
I
there's
felt
Brent.
a friend
Okay.
shirt too. You were both.
Oh, Brent.
You want to start off, Brent?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for that, Dean. Yes, both the park tenders have gone out. Virginia's confirmed that, the one for the splash pad at Manzo Park and also for the play structure at Rosedale Park. So we're just waiting for those both to come back and excited to see what is provided as a response for each of those. And Virginia, if you have anything further on some of the details of that, feel free to proceed.
Just with the splash pad has two components. So the part that's out right now is for all the splash pad features and the pouring of the pad. Once we have those designs evaluated, then we can take the preferred design and provide that to WSP, who's the engineer on the project, and then they will kind of take with what they need to do to connect the services, and they'll do a tender out for all of the big major construction, so all the deep groundwork, the connection of the drainage, water supply, electrical supply, and the preparation of the pad up to granular B. And then at the next stage, the supplier will come in and do the finishing work and lay all the piping for the features and those components of the project.
Any questions or comments? Thanks, Brent. Thank you, Virginia. Item number 5.3 on our agenda is the Snowden Park request to rename. Basically, what's happened is we have a motion here to appoint two people to participate, as it says, to participate in the task force with the director, manager, and manager of parks and supervisor recreation to the information about renaming Snowden Park and then reporting back to this council before we report that to city council. So basically, I think before we ask for a mover and a seconder, we need to ask for some volunteers. Anyone interested in participating in that? I don't know if you're familiar with it, or if Virginia, if you want to sort of explain the.
I can provide some more information. So the previous meeting, we had correspondence that had come from the Children of Shinwalk Alumni Association, as well as Don Elliott and his family on behalf of Ashton Snowden. So there was a request to rename Snowden Park to Memorial Park. That was presented to council. And then from there, a resolution was passed, bring it back to PAC as per the policy for discussion, and then we create the task force. So we're looking for two members to sit and kind of review all of the history and the information that's presented, and then bring the report back to this committee.
Is anyone interested in volunteering for that task force? Welcome, Jen.
I think, Brenna, did you have up your hand?
And I would sit on that as well.
Then Dean. Okay, if everybody's comfortable with that, then.
All right. Anyone else want to arm wrestle us for those positions? Okay, I would ask for a mover for this motion, please. And, Mark, and the seconder? Tracy, all in favor? So basically, with this task force, Virginia, will you sort of do a doodle poll to try and figure out what will work? Okay,
Yeah, we'll be sending out a.
All right.
That'll be the easiest.
you heard that, Brenda? You're gonna get invited and we'll decide what day works for everybody. Okay, thank you, everyone. Item 6 on our agenda. Subcommittee task force updates. 6.1 is STAC. STAC is not dead in the water. There is still some planning going on. There has been a little hiccup in one of the very active members of STAC is a little not necessarily unhealthy, but had a little bit of a medical situation, Andre Riopel. So basically, we're sort of sitting back, and we had planned to have a meeting on the 26th or 27th of February, but that didn't happen. So essentially now we're looking at the 3rd or 4th week of March, and we'll let you know what's going on. Any questions? We did have a meeting with the head of the planning department, and things are very positive. So basically, it's just to get working with them. Item number 7 on task force or subcommittee. I'm sorry. I guess we have no other subcommittees, but item number 7 on our agenda, new business. We have historically have had 3 pump track events. Just for those of you who are sort of new to the committee, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee was able to, with some community members, construct a pump track in the central part of the city at an area called Esposito Park. And it's been a very successful facility. Kids love it. It's very well used. The very first year we were open, we put together what we call the summer kickoff, a pump track event. It's a one-day event, usually on a Saturday. It's only about 4 hours long, and it's fairly popular. We end up with partners and people who are interested in promoting helmet safety awareness, like with Algoma Public Health and different things like that. I was happy to see Virginia or Yari put this on our agenda, because really it comes up fairly fast. We like to do it the end of May or the first part of June. I haven't even looked at a calendar yet to see with June, but just as an example, I'll just pass these around. This was last year. We had a couple of posters to just suggest what it is, and basically it's an open invitation for the neighborhood and the neighbors or cyclists and people who just want to learn about and see the pump track. It's kind of neat. We have a guy who's an outstanding DJ to provide music for us, and there's usually a few snacks and treats and things like that. We've been lucky with weather for the last few years, but basically I'm happy that it's sort of coming to our committee to look about maybe forming again a subcommittee to work together on that. So basically, there are 2 people that are already involved in the subcommittee who have to appear, who would be Tracy and myself. But anyone else is welcome to join us. It's really a lot of fun, and it's a real family type affair. There's kids from like 2 years old to over 70 years old type of thing, having fun there. So I would ask if anyone's interested in being a part of that committee, to let us know, and basically. Okay, all right. So we have Tracy and Jen. And did you take a look at June? What?
Yeah, so June 3rd
Okay.
is actually falls in with June's Parks and Recreation Month. And
Okay.
it would tie in very nicely to our participation grant and activities that we'll be doing that week. I think that's the same week we'll be doing the Try Sport Day. So it could tie in nicely to everything that's taking place, and then we could track all of our
And I
activities.
think what we'll do is, later this week, early next week, I'll check. See what's happening
Yeah.
on June 3rd, because that sometimes has us change things a little bit.
Yeah, we've changed it in the past, like a little trail fest.
Right,
and
yeah.
Other activities. We also partner with Cycling Club. So they've done in the past, they do a little rodeo and skills session so that the kids can practice their biking skills within the area of where we usually have the outdoor rink at Escondido. So we sent all skills course in there for the kids. DSAT in the past to help units, and we always try to bring extra partners on board to help other units.
And in the past, for example, Canadian Tire and Belarusian have offered giveaways, and we had actually had a unique situation last year where there was a helmet association, and I forget what they were called. Maybe it's on our thing there, but they were in town doing a helmet giveaway through the Algoma Public Health, and that was on the Friday before. So basically, they had leftover helmets and different things like that, and so they've donated those to our event. So we were able to pass on helmets to kids that didn't have helmets and different things. So it's actually a neat event. So you don't have to commit yourself right now, but basically it's a 4-hour commitment on that Saturday, and it's really quite rewarding. It's fun to see kids and everyone participating. So let us know if you're interested in being part of that. Okay, item number 8 on our agenda, correspondence.
Could I bring something up?
Yes,
Just-
Mark.
I just wanted apologize, I never got to the grand opening, but I heard it was spectacular for the new arena. But you already did, I went on the pre-tour, I just want to say, like, it's an amazing facility. My son's hockey team, we've been to a lot of arenas in Southern Ontario, and really nice arenas, and this is just on par with those arenas, so I just kudos to the city for making that arena, because it's awesome. It really is.
I was there yesterday, Mark. It was absolutely amazing. I don't know, there was maybe 1,000 people there, or certainly over 500.
Yeah.
And it just, kudos to the team and Brent. It's hard to believe that it's actually happened. It's,
Yeah, absolutely. I picked you out in the crowd, Dean. I saw you there sitting in the stands, and it was nice to see a lot of faces there. Yeah, upwards of 500 to 1,000 people, and it's nice to see. It takes a long time. We started the grant application in 2019, and it finished yesterday at the grand open. So it was quite a long process and a lot of happy faces. So nice to be part of that event. And thanks to Yari and Virginia for their efforts and help organizing, along with other community services staff, to make the event a success. So well received by the public, I think.
yeah, and I think we want to mention that is it the 14th of March that is going to be an open house, sort of a pre-skating day.
That's correct. Yes. Virginia, I'm not sure if you have the time right there. I believe it's 2 to 4 or 1 to 4, but we can get the time out. We'll advertise that as well again, but it's right on the March break there for free skating for the public and both pads.
Okay, well, thank you, Brent. And thanks for that comment, Mark. Any other correspondence at all?
We don't have any correspondence for this agenda, but we did get a letter that came after the fact. Agenda was already out, so
Okay,
that'll be on the next agenda. The only other thing maybe to highlight during March break is, do you want to talk about the March break programs at the? church?
Yeah, so at the Northern Community Center, we're gonna have March break drop-ins. So open turf, which just works out perfectly, because now that we have the walking track over at the arena, all the walkers can move over there, and that gives us both turfs to open up for the kids. So Monday to Thursday, we're gonna have sensitive time from 9 to 10. And then it'll be open for regular users between 10:15 and 1. And then on the Friday, it'll be just regular users from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m.
okay, sounds great. Yeah, that track looks beautiful.
Yari, is
Yes.
is that going to be posted on the city's website?
So it's posted on the Facebook page right now.
Okay.
And we have posters all over the NCC building advertising it as well.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Here we are at number 9, our next meeting. Looks like that first Tuesday is April 4th. It'll be a 4:30 meeting.
And then item number 10, adjournment. The mover, please, to adjourn. Graham? And the seconder? Tracy? All in favor? Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you, everyone.